All right, welcome everyone. What a wonderful turnout. Tonight, so I'm Bob Sharits. I am the program director at the Way Out Recovery, and thank you. And I always like to start out with a couple of things. I'll get into some announcements in a minute, but I don't want to forget to thank, first of all, everybody who's sitting in the room, those of you that have shown up here tonight. Our goal, tonight's event is pretty simple. We want to do two different things. We want to celebrate those that are in recovery. So let's start off by anybody who has ever asked for help, whatever part of that recovery process you are in, or if you know someone or you love someone that is in the recovery process from mental health or substance abuse or any of the disorders that go along with that stuff, let's start off by giving them a hand. It is a big deal that you are in recovery. It is amazing that you are in recovery. You should be proud of yourselves because we are extremely proud of you. It is, addiction and mental health, it can be so debilitating, and those of you who suffer understand that. And for you to get up and ask for help and to receive that help and get in the process is an amazing and incredible thing. Don't ever doubt yourself for that. Give yourself, be proud of that. Give yourself a hand for that. Give yourself a pat on the back. So our first goal is to celebrate those that are in recovery. And our primary goal here tonight is stigma reduction. What we want to achieve tonight is a twofold. We want those who may not suffer directly, who may not understand what it means or what it feels like to struggle with mental health or substance use disorders, to be able to look at those people who suffer maybe with a different perspective. For you to understand that anybody can suffer, that nobody is exempt from those issues, that it could be your brother, your sister, your next door neighbor, your best friend, it could be anybody, right? And we want people to start looking at those who suffer no matter what condition they're in. No matter if it's the person that suffers that's living over here in Stevenson Ranch, or if it's the person that suffers that's living in the Washington Canyon country. They suffer the same. They suffer the same. And we want you to understand that so that when you know somebody or someone approaches you, we want it to be a safe space. The goal tonight is for those who don't understand to be able to have an open heart and create a safe space so that those who are suffering can ask for help. And our secondary goal in reducing stigma is for those who are suffering. We want you to be able to, on whatever level you're comfortable. I tell the clients that I work with and the families that I work with, and if you're with me, you've probably heard me say this, maybe on numerous occasions. My goal for me personally, is to walk around in an absolute 100% transparent life. I want to live that way because I don't like having secrets. It doesn't sit well with me. I don't want to hide from people in the parking lot of Walmart, I want to answer every phone call and pick up every piece of mail, and I want to live a transparent life. And I would love for anybody, for everybody to have that same goal, right? And especially if you struggle with substance abuse or mental health, to have the goal of absolute transparency. Now, the way that recovery is set up, we want you to do that on your own time. We're not going to go out and tell the world that you're in recovery. But wouldn't it be nice to live in a world where I could do that and not be judged? Wouldn't that be nice? So our goal here tonight is to achieve that right there. And it starts with everybody sitting in this room. And so I want to thank you guys for showing up. Just this turnout right here shows that we're doing our work. Maybe more so that you guys are doing your work. And then I also want to thank all of our resources that showed up tonight. I don't want to name them all because I don't want to miss anybody. But if you haven't had an opportunity to visit the resource tables, please do so. We have provided you with some punch cards, right, to get a stamp on. and Leah will be walking around and collecting those, so you don't have to get up and turn those in. If you've gone around and visited the resource tables and gotten those punched, then we have a giveaway. So we're going to then you've entered a drawing, we're going to give you something for visiting those resources. But I also want to thank the partners that we have in this event. Last year was our first annual, and Child and Family Center and the Way Out partnered up, and we did this first annual event. This is the second annual, Voices of Recovery. We do it in September because September is Recovery Month. It's National Recovery Month. And so we celebrate recovery in the month of September. And so we are here tonight as a second annual to that. But we've also partnered up with College of the Canyons Health and Wellness Center. And so I want to thank Larry Schaller back there and his team who are doing an outstanding job right here on this campus in helping people who struggle with mental health issues and substance abuse. And they offer a lot of services, a bunch of other services to students over at the Health and Wellness Center on the main campus. If you're a student at College of the Canyons and you are not taking advantage of that wonderful resource that's over there, please do yourself a favor and go and visit them, right? And something that I want to put out there that I don't think a lot of people know about as well is that Child and Family Center for a little while now has a drug Medi-Cal contract, not just for adolescents, but they have it for adults as well. And they have a fantastic drug Medi-Cal intensive outpatient program over there. And so we get a lot of calls at the Way Out, and we take private insurance and private pay, and we refer the people who have Medi-Cal that need outpatient services to Child and Family Center because it's really excellent service that they provide over there. And so if you don't know about that service, please utilize that. So I want to thank those guys for putting this thing together. And then I want to thank our panel. These guys are coming here tonight really to just open up their hearts and speak to you about what they are passionate about. I get the opportunity on a regular basis every Monday. Here, I'm going to plug this a little bit. Every Monday at noon on KHTS, there's a radio show called the Way Out Recovery Hour. Please listen to it. We have podcasts, all that stuff, right? But one of the things that I like to, when I invite guests and organizations on that show, one of the things that I like to point out is how honored I am, and I want to say this to the panel tonight, right, is how honored I am to have the opportunity to sit in the room with you guys who have dedicated your life and are dedicating yourselves to the pursuit of saving others, to the pursuit of helping others. Some of the people that are sitting in this room in various organizations have made a commitment to dedicate their entire lives to making other people's lives better. You know, there's a lot of organizations out here. Light of Hope's here tonight. Valley Recovers here tonight. There's a lot of organizations that we work on a regular basis with that have some amazing people. In the Santa Clarita Valley, we are blessed. The problem is we're scared to ask for help. I don't know what that is. There's so many people that are out there suffering and they're not asking for help. And there are amazing organizations out here. All you have to do is ask for help, and there are people here to help you. And they have dedicated their lives to doing that. And so I want to thank them for that. Don't forget that we have that tree. And what we want to do is, you know, that's a visual representation, and you can already see that it's filling up. Please go over there and put a ribbon up for someone you know that is in recovery or is struggling with addiction, or even someone who has lost their fight with addiction or mental health. Please feel free to do that. Did I already mention those cards? Yeah, they're going to come around. And
I'm coming around now, just
right.
so you know.
So here's how our night's going to go tonight. We're just going to hear from our panelists, and we're going to save a little bit of time for questions. We'll come around and pick up the cards with the questions on them. We'll have about 10 minutes at the end to answer some questions. We also are collecting information over at the Child and Family Center table, so please put your email over there. We have a couple of follow-up workshops that we're doing. Child and Family is doing one, we're doing one, but we also, if any of the other organizations want to offer any workshops or events or anything like that, we would be happy to put that out to anybody whose name is on there, so get on that list. So, I think I've said enough. I tend to talk too much, so I'm gonna go ahead and quiet down now and turn it over to our first panelist. This young lady, I have had the opportunity to watch her life and her family's life transform because they have thrown themselves into the recovery process. And there's nothing more amazing when you watch a whole family heal. And so I am honored and privileged to know her. This is Clara. Or maybe grab a mic here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
We want everyone to hear you, man. Get out there. Come on.
How's this?
That thing on. Turn them on. There you go.
Okay, how's this?
Good. No better.
Okay, hi, I'm Clara. So I guess this is all about, where it's not just those people, it can be anybody, and my story kind of starts, I grew up in Valencia. I've lived here my entire life. When I was born, both of my parents had really, really nice jobs, so, thank you.
There you go.
My parents had nice jobs, and we had these cool antique cars, and we were pretty set off. I grew up and I had a ton of friends, and I went to school around here, and I would say that I was a really, really happy kid, and for me, my struggle with addiction and mental health kind of started young. I have an older sibling who self-harms, and when I started getting, life started getting a little bit harder for me, I saw that it was helping him, so I started self-harming at around 10 or 11. And that quickly became something that I went to. It became a constant struggle, and it's something that I still struggle with. And I would say that it definitely was something. It was something that I went to whenever I felt alone, and I wasn't thinking about all of the resources that I had, and all of the family that loved me and the friends that loved me. And it wasn't until I got into junior high and early freshman year that I started to smoke weed. And that became a crutch for self-harm, which was a crutch for my mental health. And it was a very dangerous cycle, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I started to run away, and I would act out, and they falsely diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder. That's just the best thing that they could kind of think of. And in order to avoid going to a mental hospital, I made a deal with the doctor there, and I said that I would go on medical house arrest basically for a week, and that I would go into an IOP. And so then I started going to the Way Out, and I was a mess. I went to the Way Out for around like 7 months, and it was a roller coaster. I would do okay, and then I would either relapse or I would do something stupid. It got to the point where I started to drink, which was something that I never thought that I would do because my father struggled with alcoholism, and it was something that I thought that I was better than. And you could really start to see the addiction kind of set in, and you could see it start to show up because it was like drawing lines in the sand instead of in the stone. And I crossed a boundary that I never thought that I would, and I absolutely fell in love with alcohol, and it quickly became yet another crutch for every other crutch that I had. And it was something that really it changed me, and it took control of me, and I was completely and entirely powerless to it, and it ruined relationships, and it turned me into a person that I was not proud of. And I started to I got sober the first time in December. I relapsed in February, and from then it was me knowing that if I don't continue to work on myself and I don't continue to understand that I am powerless over drugs and alcohol and cutting, that it will take my life over again. Those things definitely turned me into a person that my parents couldn't recognize, that I couldn't recognize, and that none of my friends could recognize. And it was something that I had to stop, and for the sake of me being alive. And once I got sober, it's taken me a long time, just up until recently, to start to understand how to live a life that's both clean and sober. And I say that as in living a life in a way that I can be proud of, and I'm still working on that. I've got a sponsor through A Light of Hope, and I'm starting to work the steps, and I'm really excited to live a life that's clean and sober. I think 8 months tomorrow. And I'm just really excited with the path that I'm on, and I know that I can be proud of it, and so can my parents, and so can the people around me. And
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We had the time I'd have her parents come up here and tell her how, I'd do a little session with them, tell her how proud you are of her, right? All right, thank you, Claire. 8 months sober, and how old are you?
16.
16 years old. that's a big deal. That is a big deal. Mindy?
My turn, I guess.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Mindy, and I am a recovering alcoholic and drug addict. Sort of like Clara, which is amazing that she's here doing this. I have to give you props for that because you were great, and this is not easy to do. I grew up here in Santa Clarita, with the exception of a few years here and there away at college, and then when I was living in the Valley for a little while, this is always where I've been. I went to Peachland Elementary, I went to Class 3 to junior high, I graduated from Hart High School, I lived in a nice house in a nice neighborhood, I had great parents, they're still married today for 44 years, I came from a nice family, and I never thought when I was a kid, obviously, that I was going to grow up and become a drug addict. I knew that I felt a little bit different than people. I know that I felt on the outside looking in. At a young age, I went through a sexual assault, and I kept that all to myself. Because in my family, we were taught to be very independent, to think for ourselves, to find the solution. There's always an answer to a problem, My dad worked in aerospace for a long time, so his engineering brain, was sort of instilled in me that we figured things out for ourselves. I don't really know where I got that from, but that was what I always thought. And, in going through those things, I always kept everything on my own. Until I could find one person that I could maybe reach out or just open the door a little bit and let them kind of see what was going on, that could help me. And the first time that I went into therapy, I was 13 years old. By the time I was 15 or 16, I was on prescription antidepressants because I tried to kill myself already. I wasn't in a happy place. During my time in high school, I had played around a little bit with some drinking and some smoking pot, and I didn't really think anything of it. I thought that that was the normal high school experience. I was supposed to be doing these things. It's what the kids in the movies did, it's what the kids on TV did, it was what looked really cool, and I just wanted to fit in with everybody. The first time that I was exposed to prescription opiates, I was 15 and I had just had surgery. I had my appendix out. A year later, I had to have my gallbladder out because of some medication that I was on. Anyway, in the subsequent years following that, I would go on to have another 9 surgeries. So because I was constantly in and out of these procedures and I was in chronic pain because of some health issues that I had, I always had access to opiates. Constantly had access to opiates. And if anything hurt, I was going to take a pill because it made everything feel better. By the time that I was 24, I was working in a successful job. I worked at the police academy for LAPD. I had a husband. I had my own condo. We had 2 cars, the whole shebang. But what nobody else knew was that I was addicted to opiates and that I was drinking more than anybody knew. As that addiction grew and got worse, everything around it started to crumble. I lost that job. I lost that husband. That was kind of a good thing, though. But, but my life started to become very small. I was living with my parents again. I didn't have $1 to spend on anything but getting the fix that I needed. And everything finally blew up and I went to rehab for the first time. I was probably 23, 24 when that happened, and I was doing so much pills that I didn't realize the toll that it was taking on my body. After I got out of that rehab, I lived in a sober living for a little while and I tried to stay clean and sober, and I didn't realize how serious it had become until a person that I grew up living next to since I was about 5 or 6 years old died from an Oxycontin overdose. That was really hard for me. I couldn't see how our relationship and the the toxicity of it was just killing both of us, and he died. You know, his father worked in law enforcement, and it didn't matter, because it doesn't matter who we are or where you grew up as or where you live. This thing is gonna get you whether you want it to or not. You know, if you're destined to become one of us, it's there. You know, after I left that rehab for a while, you know, I couldn't do it. I couldn't not use, and I couldn't not drink. And shortly after that, I started to use heroin and crack cocaine. The two, for me, just went hand in hand, and it started really fast. I remember the very first time that I tried heroin, I used a needle, because I had been in the hospital so much, and I knew what IV medication was like. I wanted that feeling, I wanted that rush, and I sought it for a long time after that. You know, I tried to get help a bunch of times, and I would stay clean and sober for a little bit, and then I would go back out, and you know, it was like this constant back and forth, and my poor family was just, they had to keep me at arm's length for a long time, because I wasn't safe to be around. You know, I wasn't okay. You know, by the end of that time, when I knew that something really needed to change, I was living in my car in the San Fernando Valley. I was not in a healthy way. You know, I was probably about 70 pounds skinnier than I am now. You know, I didn't look good. My skin was yellow. I had scabs all over my skin. I had heroin literally coming out of my skin because I was doing so much of it that my body couldn't process it. And so it was literally, I was respirating it through my skin. You know, and there were a couple times when I overdosed, and I didn't even think that that was really the problem. You know, if I could just get a couple things worked out differently, everything would be fine. You know, and then something happened. I don't even know what it was, but I reached out to my mom one more time, and they were going to give me another chance. And she helped me get into a detox. When I got out of detox, I needed to find a program. That was one of the conditions of living in their house, was that I had to go at least to an outpatient program. You know, we made some phone calls, and I talked to some people, and I talked to this guy on the phone who had a really raspy voice. And I didn't like him. He was not nice. You know, and I relapsed after that one more time. And I ended up going on a binge one weekend, and by the time my parents caught up with me, my dad has never hit me, touched me like in a angry or physical way. He physically had to restrain me because I was trying to scratch the skin off my face, and I was pulling my hair out at the roots because I was doing so much that I was losing my mind. That was not something I had lost before, but in 3 days I started to lose it. And, you know, it was finally later on when I was retelling that story to someone that it sort of clicked for me that I'm going to lose everything, including my sanity, if I keep doing it this way. And I just needed help. And so I asked for help again, one more time. And, you know, my sobriety date is July 3rd, 2011, so I just celebrated 8 years. Changed a lot since then. I'm married again, I have kids, I'm a mom, you know, I've been able to go back to school. I never thought that I would get a chance to have any of those things because I didn't really think that I was worth it. I have Bob to thank for some of that. You know, and I have this beautifully blessed life today, and I wouldn't have any of that if I was still doing the things I was doing before. So
Thanks,
thank
Mindy.
you.
Another miracle. So we asked, now we're going to get into our professional panel, but Chris is fortunate enough to be on both sides of that. So Chris is going to be on transition from his personal story into now being the pastor over at Celebrate Recovery at Real Life Church. So Chris Freeman.
Think you get the Check, there we go. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Bob, for inviting me to be out here, and thank you to everyone who can make it. I'm really overwhelmed with connecting with a lot of old faces. I've been blessed to be able to be in the community out here for about 5 or 6 years, and it's really great to see the resources that we have for people when they're ready to come forward and say that they need help. So I really feel grateful. I really feel grateful for what I do. Like Bob mentioned, I'm a pastor over at Real Life Church. I run a program over there called Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery, the very short version of it, is just another 12-step program. One of the many great programs that are out here in the community for people that struggle with what we call hurts, habits, or hang-ups. So I'm really thankful to be there. But part of the reason I am there in the position I'm in is because my journey has been kind of like Bob mentioned on both sides of the coin. In that I'm in recovery myself, and I want to speak directly to. It's really hard to summarize your story in a short amount of time, but I want to do that. Give a little backstory briefly because I want to talk into how specifically stigma has affected me, and how it quite literally almost cost me my life. And to do that, just a little quick backstory is I grew up and I had as many people have, you know, I grew up and I had thank you for the air drum. I had a very up and down childhood. I had some really high highs, some really low lows. One of the highs was a couple of amazing grandparents, one that's sitting right here, hi grandma, that adopted me and raised me. I'm very thankful for it. Yeah, so that, and they saved me from a life much different than I would have had. And I also went through a lot of abuse growing up, both physical and sexual abuse, and that led to the development of a lot of mental health issues that I didn't know of at the time. So essentially, since I had memory, I had these issues, and they were undiagnosed until I was literally 25 years old. But those issues were post-traumatic stress disorder. So some people think of PTSD as like a thing that's just you get from like a tragic accident or combat, but you actually can get it from things happening in your childhood, and that was my experience. And then the other thing I had that I developed was major depressive disorder. And so I carried that with me, and I just kind of thought that was normal. That was just how you felt until high school came around. And then when I was 16, I was in my psychology class, and one of my friends handed me a little white pill. And I took that pill, and that pill was an opioid. And the best way I can describe, the best way I've heard it described, is that it was kind of like this noise that was in my head that I didn't even realize was there, just kind of shut off. And it was like this, because if that's been how you felt your whole life when you have a mental health issue, that's your normal. You don't have anything to compare it to. So for the first time in my life, I was able to compare it to this feeling of kind of having some of that pain and that trauma just drowned out. And I wasn't aware at the time at all that that's what was happening. All I knew is I wanted to feel like that forever. That's all I wanted. And so over the next 10 years, because if you're not aware, addiction progresses. My addiction progressed, and I was off to the races right from the start. And it progressed to the point where, quite literally, this is not an exaggeration, because with opioids, you know, you get what you can, you mix and match, you do whatever you can so you're not withdrawing. But if I had just strictly like regular strength Vicodin, for example, it was to the point where I was taking 40 to 50 pills a day. And that's not an exaggeration at all. And that was very unmanageable for a couple of reasons. One, financially, it wasn't sustainable. And two, it was wrecking my liver because Vicodin and all those things have acetaminophen in them, which is very hard for your liver to process. So what I did was what a lot of people that become addicted to opioids do. I transitioned to a different drug that was cheaper, that was more available, that was stronger, and that drug was heroin. And so that's how my journey began on heroin. I never set out to become addicted to heroin. I always had in my head when I tried to rationalize and justify my addiction that at least I wasn't addicted to heroin. And then as soon as that happened, I moved the goalposts again. Well, at least I'm not injecting it, you know, and it just kept going from there. But when I got addicted to heroin was really when I hit what I would consider my absolute bottom, in that I became hopeless. I became very suicidal, to the point where I don't know that I could have gotten closer to actually following through and committing the act of suicide. It was to the point where I had a shotgun at home that I literally just sat on my bed locked and loaded, just hoping that in the day I would have a moment of bravery to be able to follow through and take my life. And the reason that really, I really associate that hopelessness with stigma is because part of that hopelessness was that I didn't know a single person that was in recovery for any kind of opioid. I knew some people that were in recovery for alcohol, but in my mind, my reality was that you just don't get better from this. People don't get recovery from this. Alcohol, it's possible. I know this guy and that guy. But opioids, it just didn't exist. And I wish back then that there was more of a normalcy in talking about this stuff, that people were more open with it so that I could have known. Because what it took for me to get through that time and get into a inpatient rehabilitation center was my wonderful wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, reaching out to someone who happened to be in recovery for a pill addiction that had some time. And that little meeting, we got coffee, and that little session I had coffee with was just enough hope to get me through, to get me in the next week until I got in a treatment center. And now I know a world full of people that they're in recovery for that stuff. But at the time, that hopelessness was very real, and it quite literally almost cost me my life. And so one of the things we talk about in recovery is like anonymity and confidentiality and why that's important. But I am very happy to surrender my anonymity any chance I can, because in the hopes that my story might just reach that one person who may have been in a similar situation that I was, that just doesn't have any hope that they can get out of the situation that they're in. So that's kind of from just a short version of my personal story and how stigma's affected me. And from a professional kind of standpoint, I work with a lot of people nowadays. In fact, any given week over at Real Life Church on a Friday night, we have anywhere from 120 to 130 people. So it's a really, really amazing program. And I've seen everything from probably the stereotypical person you might think of, like a homeless person that is addicted to heroin or meth, that's living in the wash, all the way to being in groups with doctors. One of my leaders at Celebrate Recovery is a lawyer. I've had teachers, I've had firemen, police officers, other pastors, people in recovery themselves. There's all ages, all races. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It's across the board. There's a statistic, I don't know what the exact number is, but everyone in here, when Bob made that comment, everyone clapped. Everyone either is in recovery or knows someone they're close to, because it's such a prominent thing. And the unfortunateness of it is that a lot of times people see it as a moral failing rather than a health issue, which is what I truly believe it is. The definition of stigma, I looked it up, and I forgot it. It was a mark of disgrace. That's how they define stigma. And that's sad to me, because when that happens, when people are afraid to come forward and talk because they feel a sense of disgrace about what they're struggling with, what happens is it creates a culture where people are uneducated about addiction, programs that they need are underfunded, and there's just a wild misunderstanding of addiction and what the root of the issue really is. And it's hard to hear that, and sometimes when I hear that from people, because I get people that still have that mindset of struggling with, like, well, he's just a drug addict, that kind of thing. And what I like to ask to those people is just to really think about why. Why would someone go there? Why would someone turn to this destructive thing to do that? It's not usually just a decision you wake up and make one day. I just read an article recently that said that they did a study of people that were in recovery for drugs and alcohol, and of those people, they surveyed them, and 72% of them had been reported that they'd been abused at some point in their life. And then of that 72%, 75% of those people said it happened to them as a child. And that was my story. I was trying to numb and escape this pain I had from these things that I didn't know how to deal with, that my family didn't know was there. And it's just kind of the reality of it. And so it's always my hope that people don't have that as a barrier to asking for help. One of the things that can happen, I feel like one of the pushbacks sometimes I've heard is this idea that when we're talking about reducing the stigma, sometimes there's like this pushback of like, well, you're trying to push off responsibility for these people that are their lives are out of control. You don't know the damage they've caused. And I can tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, when we get people that come to us as professionals, that what we're trying to get them to do is to go on this journey, this path, to learn how to take responsibility for what they've done and live their life in a different way and make amends when they need to make amends and right what they've wronged. But we can't do that if we can't get them through the door to begin with. So we really, I'm very adamant about being able to speak about this stuff, even on the mental health side of it. I'm wearing this pin today because you guys might have heard it in the news, but a fellow pastor of mine, a friend of mine earlier this year at our church took his life that struggled with mental health issues. So it's all hits very close to home on a very personal level. I have many friends and family that are in recovery, and it's just my hope that that stigma would be lessened to the point where people are willing to walk through the door and get the help they need. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Felicia? Yeah, probably.
Hello? Is it on? Yeah. I can't hear it. My name's Felicia. I work at the Child and Family Center in the Substance Use Department.
Right.
Go, Felicia! I'm really touched to look around this room. We did this event last year and it was much, much smaller. And I look around and, when I came back to Santa Clarita a couple of years ago, there was one place in town that handled addiction and so forth. And now to look around the room, I see people from probably 5 different places I've worked. I see clients, past and present, and it's just a beautiful thing to see all you guys come together for this cause, because it is really important that we change the way we look at things so that people will be able to get the help that they need. I wanted to thank you guys for sharing your story. I think it's really brave and courageous to come up here and look at all these faces that you probably don't know and be able to tell them your truth. But the more we put a face to things, the more easy it becomes for people to get the help that they need. They say that the hardest thing to do is to reach out and ask for help, to say that you need help. Especially with women, I find that they think that they can wish it away. It's not good, that's not going to happen. You need to be able to feel safe enough to come out and ask for help. And when I look around this room and I see all these people, I feel that, this is a community now. It's nice to have family support, but not only do you have family support, you've got community support here of people who love you and embrace you and want to see you succeed. We work with a lot of addicts and they tell us that, they've burned a lot of bridges in a lot of cases. It's very, very hard to rebuild those connections, and a lot of times they don't feel that they deserve to do so. And so we work with them on, building confidence and, like you were saying, wronging rights and trying to help them be the best version of themselves that they can be. So I hope that if you need help or you know somebody who needs help, that you're able to reach out here. I'm not going to take up too much more time because I want to let you guys have a little bit of time for questions afterwards. But we welcome you. Somebody here is waiting to help you. Thank you.
All right, Travis from the J team.
How you guys doing tonight? I'm going to take this approach from the law enforcement. I became a deputy sheriff back in 1999. And back then, Bob wanted me to talk about where the avenue of the sheriff department has gone. Now, I'm just one single person, but I can tell you when we started, the number one goal was when we went on shift to see how many felony hooks we can make. What was the easiest way to make a felony hook? Go look up an addict. Go look up a drug. You knew exactly where to go. Like fish in a barrel, you know where they all hung at. That's what you did. What I started to learn real quick was, you hook them up, you take them to jail, you stick them behind bars. I go home. That was the end of it. It was great. You get a little high five in there. How many hooks did you get? This is awesome. This will work. I slowly started to realize I wasn't making an impact on anything. I wasn't changing anything. My stat was for me. My stat was for my buddy. Because we had been taught for how long, go jam them up, get the hook, get the hook. That's your job. Your job is to enforce. Fast forward about 19 years, 18, 19 years to where we're sitting now. My job on the J team is an intervention specialist. We have a 3-pronged approach. We go education, we go enforcement, and we go anybody that needs help, we are going to help them. We will do an intervention. My job now is education intervention. I don't do the enforcement side anymore. Don't get me wrong, we still have people that do that. We're on the J team now. We have taken a different path because we have now realized, I say, I can't speak for the whole sheriff department. I will speak only for us on the J team. We have now realized our biggest impact that we can make is not putting silver handcuffs on somebody and taking them to jail. There's time for that. We even use that as a tool to help us. But it becomes a tool, not a stat. We don't take those felony stats. We don't care about those misdemeanor stats anymore. The station here in Santa Clarita works toe and toe with the city. We work very well with the school, the high school district, the Hart High School District. Those three entities have come together to create so many different outlets because they have also joined and started to think more about less hooking up, less taking to jail, more of the opportunity to help. So when Bob asked me to come out here and give a conversation and talk to you guys, and he talked about the stigma, where's it's going, we had to actually erase a stigma of our own to do our police work differently. And we've now learned it. And we see how much more and how beneficial it has become to help. Now my job, I actually specialize in juveniles. Anybody 18 and under that gets hooked up, that gets in trouble, narcotic, alcohol, anything, will come across my desk. It used to come across our desk, we'd sign it, we'd send it down to someone. By that I mean we send them down to probation, they go down to juvie. We did our job, that's what we were taught. Now the J team got in with the county, got in with the city, and said, hey, I want to insert myself in between. We stuck ourselves in between. So now I see every site, I get every kid comes across my desk, they get a personal one-on-one interview from me and with their parents. And we offer them diversion. We offer them all these people that you see in this room. We send them to all of them, and we hold that citation. If they can prove they can help themselves out, we got permission to go ahead and file it right behind us. We don't even file that citation. They get one shot. We can give them that one shot. The city agreed to the one shot, but at least we have that now. We have that opportunity to give it to them.
Thank you. So give a hand for all of them, please. I heard the message. I heard the message, man. I love when I can hear the message. And we're going to open up for questions, but I feel obligated to make a statement about law enforcement. Only, and maybe it's because
Should I leave?
No, please. Maybe it's because I was such a thorn in their side for so many years, and I feel like I owe them an amends, or something, right? But you know, a lot of us that are in recovery, you know, we do the work, and part of the work is to make amends. And through the step process, I have been able to change my perception of what I thought they used to be. I have a process to do that, and I've opened my mind and been able to change my mind. But I always like to say publicly how very proud I am of the law enforcement that we have today, and to consider them my friends today, because it has got to be so much harder for them to change their perception of us. I can't imagine what you guys see on a daily basis, man. I cannot imagine. I mean, I can't imagine, right? But it is amazing to me, and I can never thank law enforcement enough for having, somebody had the guts one day to stand up and say, we're gonna treat them like people, not like numbers, and it has opened up a door, and law enforcement today has such a beautifully open mind to helping us, you know, and so I always like to take an opportunity to say that publicly. So thank you guys for what you do. It's a different world we live in today, you know? It's a different world we live in. So we are going to, how are we going to do these questions? Am I going to just read them from notes? Has anybody written down any of the questions that we have? On the index cards that you'd like to ask, either myself or the panel. And if not, I have something else we can do. We're good? Does anybody have any questions? Anybody want to ask these guys anything? I would imagine that you can, that you know that they are completely an open book, so anything that you want to hear. There is one question over here. Make sure the mic's on now. Okay, so, so there's a question that I think Travis can answer. You know, what is a J team, right? So,
Okay.
so they want, like, what's a J stand for? Tell us what you do.
I can do that. In 2010, the team was established, and it was actually established as a juvenile intervention team. And good or bad, it has now grown into also encompassing adults. In fact, so much so that we consist of a sergeant, a detective, myself, and then we have 2 of the enforcement guys. Starting a week ago, we have doubled in size. There's 2 of us, there's 4 enforcement guys, there's 2 detectives now. So where we have actually been able to split the J team into 2, we can now deal adults. We have a whole team set aside for adults, a whole detective, intervention specialist, and 2 regular deputies that deal with all the adult addicts. Now we have me, a detective, and 2 day-down cars that deal with purely juvenile. We are able to attack this at a 2-prong. So the J team came about because of the epidemic and the city started to see it coming in. The captain at the time decided, hey, we needed specialized units just to deal with the narcotics and alcohol. And since then, we said we've grown and we've gotten into schools now. We've gotten into high schools. We're into junior highs. Yes, we are into elementaries. Now, elementaries aren't too happy because a lot of the parents say, cover your eyes and walk on by. It's too early to start this. The unfortunate side is they're just going to go ask a friend and now the friend's going to tell them. So we can do the gamut for the J team. We will, one day, I will talk to juveniles. The youngest we've had is a 9-year-old on ecstasy. I can talk to that kid, and the very next day, our team handles all the overdose deaths in the valley. We respond to all the overdoses, no matter ways, that's our team does. So we do run the whole gamut. On my job, I will set aside times. I can get people into counseling all the way. We've helped move 2 families out of state. Anything in between, residential IOPs, everything across the board. We are open book. You can come to us anytime. We send out letters. We drive to houses. I've met people at Castake. I've met them in wherever they're comfortable. They want a text, they want a phone call, they want an email. However it is, they contact us. We will sit down. They will get a face-to-face conversation with me or with somebody on the team to help them in whatever part they want. We also deal with juveniles. We go to the Thai program. We talk to kids all the time. We go give presentations at schools all over the place. We get them educated. We surprise how many times even parents, we'll talk to parents and try to get them educated, how surprised they are at even the laws, how much the laws have changed, how it's become a little more difficult for us to do the things that we're actually able to do. So we run the gamut, and the J team we had to break it down to the J, just the juvenile.
I believe it's 40 years old and under, basically, right?
We usually at 40 years and older. We've now gone over 40
Okay.
with handing out letters to people because we ran into people that said, hey, 60 something and I am sick and tired of doing this.
Yeah.
And we're not ever going to say no. So
Well, it's a wonderful example, so I want to thank Travis again. It's a wonderful example of how we can work together. You know, they're not separate entities anymore. Everybody's working together to try to get you the help that you need, and all you have to do is ask for the help. And sometimes with organizations like, and programs like the J Team, you don't even have to ask for help. You know, you can be hooked up and then they're gonna come and offer you help, which is wonderful, right? Because I don't know what it is about me, and maybe a lot of us, is I can be dying and I go, I got this. I got this, right? It's that pride that stands in the way. So we're gonna do one more question, and then I wanna move on to a couple other things. Is the J Team only for the Santa Clarita area?
yes,
Yes.
we are the only team in the county. We're starting to spread. We actually are going to other law enforcement agencies and telling them and showing them our program. They're starting to copy us because we want it out there. It doesn't happen in the county. The majority of my patrol time is done in the Antelope Valley. When we get kids, I get kids, the program and stuff that we're able to offer them through our community court, through our diversion programs, they don't exist in Palmdale, Lancaster, over the hill, San Bernardino, nothing. It's still, you're hooked, you're booked, you're done. It doesn't happen. That's what's so special about working in the city, from the high school district, with all the programs, with the sheriff department is, when we get a hold of them, there are many things we can do with them.
if you have an organization that wants education on drugs and what's going on, please contact the J team, because that's one of the things that they do as well, is they'll come into your organization, schools, whatever, and they'll come in and give an education on current trends, what's going on, what it looks like. Parent organizations, it's a great resource, because a lot of parents out here don't even know what drug paraphernalia looks like, and they find it in their kids' rooms and they go, we didn't even know he was doing drugs. And so it's a wonderful resource for education for parents, and they're available to everyone. So let's give the panel another hand. And we have a couple of other points of business. We're gonna call the winner, right, and I want to walk over here and do something real quick, because tonight there's been a lot of talk about resources, right? So first of all, I want to stop here, and as you're walking out tonight, I want you to pay attention to this tree, right? Every ribbon that's on this tree, just from this small crowd, this many ribbons have been put on the tree. Those are all representing people who are either struggling or have lost their fight with addiction or mental health. And so pay attention to that. I did the numbers. We had a community resource luncheon at our place when we first opened, and I did the numbers based on national statistics, which is about 8.1% of the adult population qualifies for a substance use disorder in the United States. Based on that population, there's roughly 12,000 people in the Santa Clarita Valley, adults that need help. 12,000, that's a lot of people, right? And so this is a very small number right here, very small number. I am so glad that everybody showed up tonight. What I want to do before we do this last thing, and we will get out of here, is I want to name these resources so you guys know who we're talking about. Over here, and you can get these resources on your way out. We have Valley Recovery Center. They are a men's inpatient treatment facility. We have NAMI. NAMI works with parents and individuals strictly with mental health and has a lot of free services. Dual diagnosis as well. Co-occurring disorders, right? We have Narcotics Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous is free to anyone. Look them up and go to their meetings. We have Al-Anon. Al-Anon is for loved ones of those who suffer from alcoholism and addiction. And look them up, another free service in our community. We have Bridge to Home. This is homeless services and housing services, correct? We have Active Minds, which is an organization that is on campus here at College of the Canyons, and they are sending a message. I love that their colors match with our colors, right? The green ribbon is to erase stigma for mental health. Put a green ribbon on something. Let's talk about this stuff. Thank you guys for what you do. We have A Light of Hope, which is a youth and parent support program that is also free to our community. Look them up. If anybody's wants to support them, this Saturday, there's a walk called Be the Light. Sign up and raise money to give to Light of Hope. They provide all free services for everyone in our community. I'll get to you guys. Hold on one second. We have the Pause program, which is over at Golden Valley, and that is a free service to students, right?
And to their families and the parents, but we're also into the district now.
We're actually going out into the Hart School District, so another one started at Canyon High and West Ranch. They're taking notice that they need wellness centers focusing on mental health. We're really excited about that.
Yeah, this is just my opinion that we need more of this, but in our school districts, and we have the most amazing school districts out here, people move here just to go to the schools out here. It's incredible what they have, but I think they're lacking in social and emotional and well-being and community resources like the Pause program. So I'm excited that this stuff exists in our school districts. We have Strengths United, and Strengths United, what do you guys specialize in?
So we offer free services to anyone who's experienced any sort of trauma, so whether that be sexual assault, domestic violence, even bullying, gang violence, anything like that. We offer free counseling and different victim assistance programs as well.
Right. And you heard a couple of our panelists talk about, it's very common, and it will manifest oftentimes in other disorders later on. A lot of us, including myself, have suffered abuse and trauma and neglect and things like that. And we have Celebrate Recovery, which Chris is a part of, and they are a Friday nights at what time?
It's dinner is at 6. Large group is at 7, and everybody's welcome. It's every Friday night. We do a testimony every other Friday, and then we trade off between lessons and testimony
Right.
every Friday night.
And that is that's a free support group that is open to everyone at Real Life Church on a Friday night. We have the Way Out Recovery SCV, intensive outpatient for adolescents and adults. Please come visit us. Anytime, come and visit us. Give us a phone call. And we have Child and Family Center, and I already spoke, I really want to highlight the amazing program that they have, many amazing programs at Child and Family Center, but the one that's closest to my heart, obviously, is their substance abuse program, right? And so they offer Medi-Cal services for adolescents and adults. Please give them a call. All these resources are in our community, and this is just a handful of the ones that we have. But these guys are here today. Please get their information and use their services. Thank you. Here, you want to come on? Come on.
I wasn't on the docket for the night. So, everybody, thank you so much for visiting our tables. Like Bob said, great resources. We went outside, we picked the winner for the passport, and I'm so sorry if I butcher this name. Halima Saeed is our winner. Did I say that correctly? Where is she? Yay! Did I say your name right? Oh, sweet. You get a Panda Express gift card.
All right, so the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to once again thank everyone for showing up tonight. It means a lot to me. Because there are too many people that are out there struggling that don't know where to turn. And if we, in the room, can start creating a safe space in our own personal lives for the people that we love so that they can approach us and say, I need help, we can save lives. So keep on doing what you're doing. Thanks for showing up tonight. Thank you, folks.